Each event, each of the hustings is started with a 6-minute introduction statement from the 3 candidates, then followed by the Q&A, questions taken from the floor, no advanced questions, and every question has to be put to all 3 candidates. So bear that in mind when you ask a question. It's got to be a question capable of being answered by all 3 candidates. I have mentioned to the candidates that this venue used to be a slaughterhouse, but it should be a well-conducted debate. And those from Edinburgh will know that to be true. So, without any further ado, if we can go straight to the introductory statements, and I'll hand over to Ash.
Well, thank you very much, and good evening. And it's wonderful to see so many smiling faces at this event this evening. So this is the 7th husting that we're doing. I think we're getting towards the end now, but it's lovely to be in Edinburgh this evening. I know that some people have been listening to the online, the live streams, and I have been talking about the Yes campaign, and I was asking people to think about how they felt on the morning after the referendum, when we all woke up to find the result, or if we'd been up all night like I had to let that result sink in. And then I was talking about the Yes campaign, but the reason I was doing that is I was trying to sort of connect into that feeling that we all had at the time of how we'd all work together and working for a better Scotland. And that real sense of optimism and confidence and hope in Scotland and being Scottish and working towards that better Scotland. And I'm in this contest because I want to get independence, and I want to get it sooner rather than later. So, thank you. So, when I was in the Yes campaign, I was just really struck by that sense of everyone working together. And I really enjoyed that. And I want us to get back to that sense now. But I think at the moment there's a sense for me, and I don't know if other people share this, but that we're treading water a bit, certainly in terms of the progress towards either a referendum or the progress towards independence. And you'll know if you do any swimming that if you tread water for a really long time, eventually you're going to tire out and you'll be swept away. So I'm suggesting that actually what we need to do is to stop treading water, and we need to move forward, we need to change that direction. So I think we need to relight the fires of the Yes campaign right across Scotland. We need to heal the rifts in our own party. We need to unite with the wider movement, inspire and lead them, because I think that's the way we're going to get to independence, only if we all work together as one towards that better Scotland. So my suggestion for this is that we set up an independence convention. So the idea behind that is where everyone that's interested in an independent Scotland can work together. So civil society, other pro-indie parties, think tanks, academics, businesses, everyone all in together. And I haven't been waiting to do that. I've already been reaching out to various different organisations across the Yes landscape to talk to them and to see what the feeling is on that. And many of them are really excited to be involved and glad to be considered. So I think that's working well so far. And then my other suggestion is that we set up an independence commission. So the idea behind this is that rather than waiting until we become independent, that we actually start working on the infrastructure, the planning, the preparation for all the infrastructure that we're going to need to be an independent country. And then as part of that, we communicate the progress that's being made on that to the public so that they're able to see that, and so that they're going to have confidence that we have that infrastructure, which will build confidence and allow them to feel safe in choosing to vote for independence. So as First Minister, I would see my role as concentrating on the priorities of the people of Scotland. And so that would be things like the NHS, the cost of living crisis, businesses, the environment, our schools, education, and so on. And I intend to put the absolute best people into those top, tough jobs, and intend to give them the full freedom to do whatever they think needs to be done. And I think we need to be really transparent, really accountable. That's how we build trust in government. And with that trust in government, we can move forward towards independence, because that trust builds confidence as well. And I'm suggesting that we, instead of being passive, that we take control of this process towards independence ourselves. So I'm calling it the voter empowerment mechanism, and it's a permanent mechanism that treats each and every election as an opportunity for the people of Scotland to express their views. It gives the power back to the people of Scotland and lets them tell us when it's time for Scotland to become an independent country. So I'm happy to talk more about that this evening, but I just want to leave you with this, that if you pick me to be your leader, I will make the hard choices, I'll make the tough decisions, and I'll be absolutely and utterly relentless until we get to the point where Scotland's future is finally in Scotland's hands.
Thanks very much, Ash. I should have mentioned that if anyone's taking photographs, it should only be of the candidates, not of other people in the audience. And also, I think if when Humza and Kate speak, if they can stay a little bit to this side. So you're going to do it on that side, just so we don't obscure the signing person. Over to you, Humza.
Thanks so much. Can you hear me okay? Good evening, Edinburgh. Thanks for that warm welcome, particularly given that you're letting a Ouija speak to you tonight. That's very kind. That just lost me half the votes in the room, I know. Listen, genuinely though, it's a real pleasure to be here with you. And can I start actually by paying tribute to my two colleagues as well, because we have been doing hustings after hustings, and we're still going, which is not bad at all. So we've got a few more to go. And I think everybody on this stage deserves a round of applause. Can I say and start with a couple of promises to you before I give you what will be a bit of the pitch. So for me, first and foremost, a promise that my campaign, and I in particular, we're going to keep this really positive. There's a really positive message, a positive vision, and we're not going to get into mudslinging or personal attacks, because the only people that benefit from that are our opposition, let's be honest. The only people who benefit from that are our opposition. So let's, for my team, absolutely keep it positive. Let's challenge each other, of course. We've got different ideas on this stage. Let's be robust about that. Let's be robust about policy. And the second promise I'm going to make you is I'm not going to talk down the record of our SNP government, because we have achieved so much. We have achieved so much as a government. And again, the only people that are going to benefit from that are our opposition, when it's not going to help us to deliver independence, because our record's a good one. And I've been proud to be part of the SNP government for 10.5 years. Proud, I would hope to one day be able to build upon the legacy that Nicola and John have left us. That's a legacy that has helped us to deliver the baby box, so every child in Scotland gets the best start in life. It's a record that's seen us deliver over 100,000 affordable homes. It's a record that's seen us commit to free personal care. It's a record that's seen us expand childcare to record levels. Look at when, in much better days of course, when SNP controlled Edinburgh City Council, 1,100 affordable energy efficient homes every single year. You built 8 new schools when Adam McVeigh and the SNP team were in charge of the council here in Edinburgh. So a really good record. So why me? That's the question. You've got to ask yourself, out of the 3 candidates, who are you going to choose? Why me? Well, I think for a few reasons. First and foremost, to win independence, we've got to inspire people. You know, Westminster has many, many failings. The cost of living crisis that has seen so much damage to so many people in Scotland. The fact that in Scotland, a country that's energy rich, but our people are fuel poor. What a disgrace. The fact that we have a Prime Minister who extols the virtues of the Northern Ireland Protocol, but denies that same democracy, that same opportunity to Scotland. But, despite all those failings, we can't rely on people to vote for independence because of Westminster's failings. We've got to give them a reason to vote for independence. And that's the vision. I believe I've got the ability to reach across the divide, to build our support, to inspire people with a vision. Why do I want independence? I want independence not to reduce child poverty or poverty. I want to eradicate poverty. I want the powers of independence because I want to unleash our potential in the green energy sector. I want independence because I know that we can unleash this country's full potential. And there's so much more we can say, and we will say throughout the course of this debate, but we have to give people a positive reason, a vision. Why should you vote for independence? Because I promise you, if we do that, if we grow that consistent majority support for independence, independence becomes inevitable. We'll talk about the process, and again, we'll get into plenty of discussion throughout this about process, but our opponents are desperate. They're desperate for us to stay in this quagmire of process. Do you think talk of Section 30s and de facto referendums inspire people out there? Of course they don't. It's the vision for independence that inspires. Second reason, I hope you'll consider giving me your first choice, is I've got the experience. 10 and a half years of doing some of the toughest jobs in government, transport, justice, health. And yep, there's challenges in each of those roles. Challenges in the health service. Tell you what, those challenges would have been a hell of a lot more difficult if our NHS workers went on strike. And I'm really, really pleased that Scotland remains the only part of the United Kingdom where not a single NHS worker has gone on strike. Not because of good fortune, not because of coincidence, but because I've had the ability to reach across the divide, to bring our trade unions closer to us, to make sure we find compromise. And that's not difficult for me because I'm a trade unionist at heart, so I've got no problem doing all of that. So that's the second reason. For me, the third reason is exceptionally important, that if I am the next leader of the SNP, I want us to get out there and restart the Yes campaign as soon as we possibly can. Not just the SNP, but making sure the entire movement we take with us, that civic-led grassroots movement. I don't want to just be your first minister. I want to be your first activist. I want to stand alongside every single one of you, chapping those doors, pounding those pavements, looking into the whites of people's eyes to inspire them to vote for independence. So we need good governance. We need to restart the Yes campaign, and we need to inspire people to vote for independence. And I hope for all those reasons and all the reasons you hear tonight that you'll consider giving me your first choice. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And Kate?
Well, good evening. It's fabulous to join you tonight. As a good Highlander, I've got no skin in the game between Glasgow and Edinburgh, so hopefully you'll accept me tonight. But it's wonderful to be able to join you. As some of you know, just about 6 or 7 months ago, I had a little baby girl. So the bags under my eyes are all to do with the fact that I go home from things like this, and she decides it's playtime, and then I start work the next day having not slept. But it's been absolutely wonderful to come back from maternity leave back into these hustings. As grueling as the schedule has been over the last few weeks, it's been wonderful to get round the country and meet with SNP activists across Scotland. Because what it feels like is coming home. What it feels like is coming back to a family. Because in every part of Scotland, I've had the pleasure and the privilege of campaigning on doorsteps. And looking back at the SNP's track record, looking back at the last 16 years of winning elections and the last 100 years or so of campaigning, the reason that we are where we are today, the reason that we've had successive governments in power in Holyrood and successive election results when it comes to Westminster is because we're a team. Because whatever anything else we agree or disagree on, we agree on this goal, that Scotland should be a sovereign, independent, free nation. And the reason we should be a sovereign, independent, free nation is not just because we believe in independence, but we believe in independence as a means to an end. And for me, that end is poverty. I was in Stirling today, I was in Raploch today, meeting with families and households in an area where there's high levels of poverty. And the stories that you hear are devastating. And one of the guys I was speaking to just before I arrived, he had bumped into one of the families that was making use of their food bank. And he said, "I'm off to meet Kate Forbes." And he said, "Who?" I didn't take the offence. And he said, she's going to be First Minister. And the lady said, who's that? What's that? And the point I'm making is, for that family, for that individual, the issues of just getting by every day are of such monumental significance that they need to know their politicians care not just about the figures, the stats, and the abstract arguments. They care about putting food in those kids' bellies. They care about ensuring that no child in Scotland goes to bed hungry, cold, or unloved. And as we meet tonight, there are 1 in 4 children in poverty. So when it comes to independence, when I talk about my wee girl, my wee 7-month-old girl, independence is a means to an end, and the stakes could not be higher. Because until we are independent, we will keep on mitigating the worst decisions that are being made by the UK government. We will continue to make sure our money goes as far as it possibly can, but it will be never enough to eradicate the scourge of poverty which has no place in modern Scotland. And if independence is critical, so also is the continued success of the SNP winning elections, so that we can use devolution to resolve those issues of poverty. And that's why when I take a step back and look at our success, we've been successful because we're a team. We're united with a goal. We've been successful because we've got a solid record of earning the trust of the Scottish people, that come what may, we will never let them down. And the third reason we've been successful is because we listen. We listen. When Brexit came, we listened and we stood up for Scotland. When COVID came, we listened and we stood up for Scotland. We're in the teeth of a cost of living crisis that means families across Scotland do not know how to pay next month's energy bills. We need to listen, we need to adapt. And if we care about continuing to win elections as we should and ultimately delivering independence, it matters that now again we are listening to the people. So what do I offer in this contest? Well, this is what I offer. First of all is the importance of recognising that for us to win independence, it's not enough to just persuade those who are already persuaded. Because we know, all of us in this room, all of us in the SNP, all of us in the Yes movement, we're already persuaded. But I am convinced, because I'm convinced of the arguments for independence, I am convinced we can persuade more people to support independence and grow that support. But it will take someone who can reach across the divide, who can listen, who can deliver when it comes to independence. And poll after poll at the moment is showing that it really matters for us to win independence that we have a leader that can reach out to no voters. Now, it might seem strange that I'm standing up in front of you talking about no voters, because we're all yes voters, but all of us want independence more than anything else, and that will come when we persuade people. And the other 2 reasons are this, that when it comes to devolution, I don't think it's enough to just defend devolution, although that's really important. I think we need to make devolution work as much as possible for the people of Scotland. And we've been making it work for the last 15 years. But right now, when it comes to the cost of living, our public services, our economy, we need to listen once again to what people are saying and adapt and deliver. And the last thing, what else do I bring when it comes to this contest? I bring a renewed vision, a willingness to re-energise our party and ensure it's members that are running the show, members that are influencing policy and ensuring that this is a grassroots organisation where the leader listens to the members and it's members that build policy from the grassroots up. That's important. If we believe in democracy, it needs to start with our party. And I think that ultimately that's how we persuade people of the value of independence, because our membership is reflective of the Scottish public. So on that, I'm going to stop, but I take you back to why the stakes are high. The stakes are high because 1 in 4 children are living in poverty tonight. We can't let that happen. Every day that we are not independent is one day too many. And the faster we're independent and the faster we end poverty, the better. Thank you.
Okay, we're now on to questions. The usual way of showing you want to speak. I'll try and be as fair as I can be. So just to go right to the back, first of all, the lady with the specs, sorry.
Yep.
Hi there, Sarah Chung from Edinburgh Central Branch. I work in the financial services industry, and I recently just got married to a registered mental health nurse. We joined the SNP as we believe in a fair and an independent, equal Scotland that is richer, greener, and gets rid of Westminster's archaic rule. But we are troubled by the fact that our marriage is seen as something lesser. Now, I know there are going to be people in this room who will roll their eyes and on the stream who will go, oh my God, another question on LGBTQ+. Let's focus on independence. And the NHS. Heck, I even got shouted at on the Zoom chat. But how can we believe in your vision of independence, even though we work and form a significant part of these areas you speak about? Is it not possible for us to speak about independence and the NHS and other topics without making us feel like second class? And I understand that we are a family, but sometimes, especially in the Chinese culture, in my culture, we need a whole family to account so we don't lose face.
So the candidates, first of all, is Humza.
Can we just make sure that the individual's okay? Sarah, okay? Yeah, yep. Thumbs up, okay. Listen, thanks, Sarah, for asking that question and speaking so passionately about it. Look, I don't take the view at all that we should only talk about certain issues and not talk about others. All these issues are really important. Dealing with the NHS, we'll get onto that, I'm certain. Dealing with the issues around the economy and the well-being economy in particular. But equality, of course, is important. Look, I've lived my entire life in this country, Sarah, much like you, as a minority in this country. And my rights don't exist in some sort of vacuum. My rights are interdependent on everybody else's rights. My rights are your rights. Your rights are my rights. And if we let somebody else's rights come under attack, they'll be my rights next. So it's so important that whoever is the leader of the SNP and therefore the First Minister of Scotland, that everybody can look that person in the eye and genuinely believe that their lifestyle will not be judged to be morally inferior to theirs. And I can give you an absolute promise, an absolute commitment that I won't just tolerate you, but I will celebrate you. That whatever lifestyle you have, however you choose to live your life, will be one where I don't just protect your rights, I advance them as far as I possibly can. And for me, I don't want to just protect them under devolution. With independence, I want your rights to be in a written constitution, and so they can be protected. And be in no doubt whatsoever, rights are under attack. If you believe that they're not, just look at what happened in Roe versus Wade in America. People are coming after rights. There's a culture war going on. We all know that. So it's exceptionally important that whoever is the next leader of the SNP, the next First Minister, that all of our communities in Scotland feel that they are protected, they're valued, and they're celebrated. And this is important in its own right. But to be frank, it's also important when it comes to delivering independence, because it's important, of course, to reach out to no voters. It's important to bring people towards our cause. It's also important we don't lose the support that we have, the important base that we have of support. And my belief, and I'll end on this point, my belief is that it is our progressive agenda that has won us election after election after election, won us support, made us the dominant political force in Scotland. And if we roll back on any of that, then we can reach out to all the no voters we want, but we will lose that support that has made us so popular. So I can give you absolutely end at this point, I give you an unequivocal commitment that if I am the next leader of the SNP, Scotland's next First Minister, whoever you are, whatever your lifestyle, know that I will not just protect your rights, but at every turn I will defend them and where possible advance them too.
And now Kate.
Great, thanks very much, and thanks, Sarah, for asking the question, because I was conscious of you asking the question on the Zoom, and it didn't get put to us, so I'm glad that you had the opportunity to ask that tonight. Scotland's diversity is what makes us the beautiful, rich, vibrant place that we call home. And Scotland, I think, has made huge strides when it comes to tolerance, when it comes to liberalism, but that will only last if it is a place where minorities, all minorities, including LGBT minorities, feel safe and secure. And it's certainly my honest pledge that I, for as long as I am First Minister, or for as long as I'm in politics, that I will uphold the legal protections and the rights that exist for every Scot in Scotland, whether they are male, female, gay, straight, or trans. And right now, when it comes to minority rights, the important part of being in a liberal, plural society is that one minority can say to another, I defend your right, or your rights, in the hope that you will defend my rights. And that is how a healthy democracy works. The closest example I have had of doing that is when it comes to budgets. So ultimately, underpinning all of the Scottish Government's decisions, laws, legislation, the progress that's been made over the last few years, underpinning all of that is the financial decisions. And in successive budgets, we have put fairness at the very heart. I have put fairness at the very heart of those budgets to ensure that those budgets are delivering for all of Scotland, but have a particular focus on supporting Scotland's minority groups, including LGBT groups. So that's the approach I've taken to budgets, which you may think it's not as important as being First Minister, but you can't be First Minister without a solid budget. And that's the approach that I would take to being First Minister. Thanks.
Thank you. And Ash?
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm a lifelong committed progressive, and I want everyone to be able to live their best, most authentic lives in peace, dignity and safety. If I'd been in the Parliament at the time when we voted on equal marriage, I would have voted for it, and I would have been glad to vote for it, in fact. A few years ago, I was invited to the wedding of some friends and activists of mine, Jean and Elaine. It was a very moving wedding, actually. The couple had been together for, I think, over 20 years, maybe nearly towards 30 years, and they hadn't been able to get married until a few years ago, so it was wonderful to be able to celebrate that fantastic day with them. So as First Minister, I will work to protect and enhance everyone's rights, but I think we do need a leader who can reflect the party's values, and I also think we need a leader who can also carry the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Ash. I'll come to the gentleman at the front here. Just to say the order of answering this will be Kate, Ash, then Humza.
Hello. Hello, everybody. Just to reassure the panel, you are my friends, even if it doesn't sometimes feel like that. My name is Paul Kirkwood. I'm a member of the Liberton North Branch in Edinburgh. And I'm a solicitor and I'm a mediator. And I heard what Kate Forbes said about shopping lists, so I'm going to come on to that in a second. And that will be a second question for all of you. My question is this: I'm not going to ask you about your strategy for getting to independence, because you've been asked that till you're green in the face, I'm sure. So here's the reverse one for you. The Section 35 order with regard to the GRR bill is a good and perfectly legal expression of power devolved being power retained. At any time, the Scotland Act of 1998 could be revoked by a Westminster government as a result of the doctrine of British parliamentary sovereignty. At a stroke, the Scottish Parliament that we all fought so hard for could be coming to an end, just like that. And so the first question I'd like to ask the whole panel is, if such an event were to come to pass, what would you do about that? The second, much shorter question, picking up on what Kate said, and this is my off the spur of a moment, a shopping list is, I am a solicitor, but I actually practice as a mediator. I don't think Scots get access to justice because it's too expensive for most of us. I have previously asked your predecessor to consider bringing forward a Mediation Act. In the last Scottish Parliament, there was an attempt by a Conservative MSP who had broad cross-party support to introduce that, but it didn't come to pass, I believe, in part because of lack of parliamentary time. I'm an SNP member, I have been since 1984, I think that's almost 30 years now. I would like the SNP to move forward with the Mediation Act, which will give people in Scotland access to justice in an affordable and open manner. So could you address that as well, please? Thank you.
Just to be clear that all future questions will be one question per person, but you've sneaked in under the radar. First of all, Kate.
Thanks very much. Well, I'm very conscious I'm sitting with two former Justice Ministers, so you should get a good answer tonight. But in terms of the first part of your question, I think you hit the nail on the head, because we all want to defend devolution. But if the sole aim or the sole limit of our ambition is to defend devolution, we are going to be on a losing trend, because this UK government will not stop, as far as I'm concerned, in eroding devolution. Now, Section 35 is just the latest example, but let's remember Section 30, where we've got multiple mandates for another referendum, and that's not been granted. And when it comes to the GRR bill, which I know is not the substance of your question, but that's not the first, and it won't be the last piece of legislation that the UK government block. So, here's the news that we all know. The only defence of laws in Scotland is independence. Ultimately, we cannot rely long-term on a UK government to respect devolution. We have got to deliver independence. And that's why, as I said in my opening remarks, the stakes are incredibly high. And I will fight harder for anyone, harder than anyone, when it comes to defending Scotland's rights. I am one of the few people that had to go head-to-head with Rishi Sunak on a regular basis during COVID, and won most of the time, didn't always win. But the point is, I never stopped standing up for Scotland when it came to what was rightly Scotland's in terms of the funding and the financial position. It's why I'm in politics. But I do want to say that, and I think that if the only route possible to defending the Section 35 is going to court, then I'll go to court. But I'd far rather we didn't just focus on defending devolution, we focused on making the case for independence. And to make the case for independence, we have got to be in campaigning mode, we have got to be making the case for independence. Independence can't just be an abstract constitutional term, it's got to be real for people. We need to demonstrate why independence is not just this thing, it's about making the difference to people's cost of living crisis. It's not just this thing, it will make the difference to poverty in Scotland. It's not just something out there, it's what will mean Scotland can grow and prosper more successfully. So an independent government would need to manage its affairs well. A devolved government needs to do that whilst also campaigning for independence at the same time. And that is all that will defend, ultimately, devolution, is securing independence. So I'll stand up on devolution. I will stand up and I will fight. But I tell you, the only cast iron guarantee on our laws is independence. And that must be our focus as a party, first and foremost.
Thanks, Kate. Now, Ash.
Thank you. So on the mediation first, yes, there's a few former Justice Ministers on this panel this evening. When I was in the Justice portfolio, we were certainly well aware of what you're saying in terms of mediation. And there's various sort of government initiatives that are trying to promote that as something that should be taken forward. And I think that's absolutely the right approach that we should be doing. So I was glad to see that being taken forward. And I'm sure that still is happening under Keith and Elena. So in terms of the Parliament being closed down, we can definitely see that Westminster is looking for all and every avenues to kind of thwart the democratic process in Scotland. We know this.
They've been up to all sorts of things. One of the sneakiest ones they've been doing recently was this Internal Markets Act, which means that many of the pieces of legislation that we're seeking to use in Scotland are now coming into conflict with that. When I was a minister, I was trying to pursue fireworks legislation, and even that was coming a crop with this Internal Markets Act in terms of how we held information and how we were able to ask retailers to hold data, and we weren't able to do this. We had to find a workaround, which we did do, but it tends to make things a bit more complicated than it's necessary to do. So I don't think they would seek to close the Parliament down. I don't think, quite frankly, they would get away with it. But I think that's why, it's a bit like going back to my analogy about treading water. I think if we tread water and we're on the defence all the time, I think that's when you start to get pushed back. That's how I see it. And so, in my opinion, the best form of defence is attack. And that's why I want us to move forward with a more assertive, if you like, strategy for independence. So I think this process that we're going through, or we have been going through over the last few years now, of obviously winning elections and then using that as a moral mandate, if you like, to go and then ask Westminster, if we can have a Section 30 order to have an advisory referendum. I mean, obviously we know that hasn't been working. So my view is, why continue with a process that isn't working? We need to reassess, pivot, and look to see if there's another way we can go forward with that. So my view is that, the people of Scotland are sovereign. We don't need to ask the permission of Westminster. And, not many countries have become independent through referendums. Most of them have used the ballot box. So the referendum is not the gold standard here. Nicola Sturgeon and Alex Salmond were only half right. Actually, the ballot box is the gold standard here. And so I want us to move to this permanent mechanism of seeking to give that power back to the Scottish people, which is where it belongs. This is not about what Westminster politicians have got to say to Scotland, or even, what SNP politicians have got to say. This is about the people of Scotland and what they want to do and when they want to govern themselves. And I feel very sure that that will be quite soon. I looked up, obviously I've been talking about this, getting the democratic mandate a lot over the last week. So I looked up the figures yesterday. And actually in the regional list vote in the last Scottish election, all the pro-independence parties combined to a vote of 50.3%. So I think what that tells us is we are very, very close to being able to win a majority in the next election. And as far as I'm concerned, if we use the process that I'm suggesting, we are one election away from Scotland choosing to govern itself.
Thanks, Ash. And Humza?
Paul, well done for two things. First of all, for getting to the very nub of the issue. And secondly, for managing to squeeze in two questions. That's well done, because there's always one chancellor in the room. I'm pleased you've managed to do it this time around. Let me get to the mediation question first, because I think it's an excellent question. We've got great expertise. Anybody who knows John Sturrock, for example, and the great work that John has done, knows about that arbitration, knows about mediation, and I'd be happy to look at the bill, because you're right, parliamentary time is what worked against the member who brought that bill forward. So I'd be happy to look, because your central premise is absolutely correct. I think I can say that, and not overstepping the mark with the current Justice Secretary on this panel, but there is more we can do with access to justice. No ifs, no buts about that. Let me get to the central question you asked. For me, the next First Minister absolutely has to fight against the Section 35 order. No ifs, no buts, because that is the first time the Section 35 Westminster veto has been used. Can you imagine what signal it would send, what precedents it would set, that if the first time Westminster used the Section 35 to veto our legislation, which, by the way, remember, was passed by a majority of the Parliament, whether you agree or disagree with GRR actually is neither here nor there. It's about the principle of Westminster being able to veto legislation passed by a majority of the Parliament, actually had support from members of every single political party. If we cave in, if the first act of a new First Minister is to cave in to that, they will come after bill after bill after bill, and we just can't allow it. So I give you an absolute unequivocal guarantee, an unequivocal guarantee that if I'm the First Minister of Scotland, I will stand up and I will challenge that Section 35. No ifs, no buts, no maybes about it. And do you know what? I would do that if it's a bill I disagreed with. Even if it's a bill I disagreed with, I would be the first one to defend the democratic will of the Scottish Parliament. Because if you can't defend democracy under devolution, how on earth are people going to trust you to do it when we're independent? Right? So we've absolutely got to do that first and foremost. And second thing I would say is that the more and more Westminster deny democracy, the stronger our support gets. I slightly disagree with Ash here that I could see Westminster doing exactly as you outlined, because they are getting more muscular in their approach, more aggressive in their approach. And by the way, if we lay down in Section 35, they will feel emboldened and empowered. So that's why it's so important we don't give them that opportunity.
Thanks, Humza. I'm just trying to make sure we're gender balanced in this. The lady with, is it a glove? Yes, there you go. A hat, there you go.
Thank you. I'm not exactly the tallest, so I had to find a strategy too. My name is Marta Matos Coelho. I'm a City of Edinburgh councillor, and I'm a very proud New Scot. So you can see where this question is going. We are 7.5% of the population of Scotland, and we chose Scotland as our home. And we are, hopefully, all 7.5% very proud. So my question has two parts. Sorry, it's not two questions, two parts. I need to be different. So first part is, I remember on the last manifesto for the Holyrood election, there was a promise to look at the physical proof of the settled status. So what would you do if you become leader, First Minister, all that? The second question has to do with childcare. Because on top of being a New Scot, I'm also a single mom. So I have no family here to support me. The three of you are parents, so you know the challenge you go through, and you have partners. Well, I think Ash doesn't. He's more in a situation like me at the moment. So I have two young children. Being a councillor, being a mom, the childcare does not take us into consideration. So we have spoken about childcare. It's important for all the parents, but what would you do taking into account single parents and New Scots and so many families that don't have grandparents to help? Thank you.
I'm not at all fooled by the idea of saying it's two parts rather than two questions.
I think she got away with it.
Full marks for innovation. Just to say that if you do ask two questions, it means that somebody else won't get the chance. So we'll try and stop that from now on. But it's up to each of the candidates if they want to answer it. And first of all, we go to Ash.
Hello, Marta. Marta is a councillor in the area that I represent in the eastern part of the city. So in terms of settled status, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people, obviously Scotland voted to stay in the EU, and I think many of us were very dismayed, I think, at some of the messaging that was coming out of the UK in terms of our EU citizens and the way that became such an issue. And so I think one of the strong reasons, I think, for Scotland becoming independent is to be able to set our own immigration policy, and certainly to be back into the single market and have that ability for people to come and settle in the UK, and for people from Scotland to go and do likewise in the EU countries as well. So I think that definitely we would be looking for a different system, and we would be looking for one that recognises that we respect and value people who come from other European countries that want to come here and work in our NHS, work in our hospitality system, and make that easy for them so that they can feel valued and the system feels like it's a bit more welcoming. In terms of childcare, yeah, I mean, I remember this. I've got twins myself, which were, let's just say, they were quite a handful when they were younger. They're grown up now, well, sort of grown up. They're 19, so they've just gone off to uni. So, but I certainly remember what that's like to have, childcare issues and not have a lot of family close by to help. Not everyone does have that help. I totally understand that. I was a bit in that situation myself. So we need to have a system where families who have young children feel like they're supported, so that they're able to, if they want to work full time, but they have that support so that the children are well looked after in really good quality childcare that is going to develop that child, give it every opportunity so, to get the absolute best start in life. It's so important. So we need to work towards that full level of childcare. Now, we're doing really well on that, I think, with the 30 hours or the 22 hours if you want to have that through the year. I know there have been a few people said to me there's a few issues in terms of how that's implementing, but I think we can definitely improve on that and make that work really well and work to that being more flexible and more wraparound so that people are very supported. They've got the childcare that they need in order to do the other things that they want to do as a family.
Thanks, Ash. And now Kate.
Thanks very much. Well, I'll start with the childcare one because it's something that's particularly on my mind at the moment, because although home base is up in the Highlands, that's a 4.5-hour drive. And so when I'm working in Edinburgh during the week, I'm in Edinburgh and it's me and baby, 7-month-old baby, without the support, the infrastructure around me, and needing to make that work. And the SNP has done a lot to invest in the expansion of childcare, obviously expanding it to 3- and 4-year-olds and vulnerable 2-year-olds. But that still leaves, for someone like myself and perhaps for you, that leaves 2 years worth of childcare, which isn't available for somebody who doesn't have that family support. So I feel your pain in terms of trying to get back into work after being on maternity leave and the challenges there. And I think there's 3 things that we probably need to do a lot more of. The first is ensuring that we are supporting childcare providers so that they are able to provide the support. And there's a real mix. Childminders will work for some people, private nurseries for someone else, and so on, so that there is that mix. So supporting the sector in the first place to be there and available. But secondly, it's financially. So if a young mother, let's say, is spending the entirety of her salary, and we know that income levels are dropping, income levels have dropped because of inflation, spending the entirety of your salary on childcare with nothing left over, then you can't live. So it makes you hugely vulnerable as a single mum. And so ensuring that there is that financial support there. And I think we do need to look at how we provide additional financial support when it comes to mothers whose children are under the age of 3 would be the second thing. And then thirdly, with independence, we can do way more, because you look at many of the Scandinavian countries, that's what real childcare looks like. That's what real maternity cover looks like. A country that has got wonderful provision when it comes to extended maternity leave and proper childcare provision from a very young age to allow mothers back into work. We would need to have more controls over our finances and beyond, but I think we can do it, and I think that's one of the areas where we can spell out the vision for people and demonstrate that independence isn't just an abstract argument that some people have who are interested in politics. It's about making the difference, for example, to mothers who want to go back into work. My last point is just on the first question that you asked, welcome. Scotland has historically always had a problem with immigration. I love the fact that people make Scotland their home. And we want that 7.5% to be higher, because we need more people. We need more people. And it is one of the marks of a progressive country to be welcoming to refugees, asylum seekers, and those who want to make Scotland their home for a whole host of different reasons. And it breaks my heart. I find it devastating that post-Brexit we have these requirements for more paperwork to prove that you are allowed to be here, when Scotland wants to welcome people into this country. So, you're welcome. We will do all that we can with the devolved powers of making Scotland an attractive place. We will do all that we can to make that case internationally. Please come to Scotland. And before we're independent, we can start planning for independence and how we make it a far more attractive immigration approach.
Thanks, Kate. And Humza?
Oh man, the problem with answering the question third is they give good answers, But let me try to build upon what's been said, Marta. Thank you for the question. I'll also start with the childcare issue, very pertinent to me too. I've got a 3-year-old and a 30. I've got a teenager and a teenager. I've also got a 13-year-old. But the 3-year-old, I think one person clapped. Thanks, Mum. That was kind of. I've got a 3-year-old, and we couldn't do what we do without that important childcare. And for me, 3 things that we should do. So my flagship first announcement that I made, or one of the first, I should say, announcements I made when I launched my campaign, was that if I am First Minister of Scotland, as First Minister of Scotland, I would accelerate the expansion of childcare to 1 and 2-year-olds in my first budget, because it's so important for not just you, Marta, for people right up and down the country who desperately need that assistance. And why do they need it? And why is it a win-win? It's a win for them, and it's a win for our economy as well. And to me, that is the centre, that is the ethos of the well-being economy, that we ensure that fairness, opportunity is at the heart of building that economy. And that economy, not just for the sake of gleaming profits, but actually to reinvest back into the people. So childcare is so important for that. So first thing is accelerate the expansion of childcare in the first budget if I'm First Minister. Second thing would be to work with the PVI sector, because there is an issue around equitable funding. I've spoken to enough nursery owners, providers, the PVI sector, who tell me they need a more equitable funding solution. So I would look to do that with immediacy. And the third thing that I introduced, or said I would introduce as First Minister, if I'm elected, would be a helping hand fund. So that would be a £500 loan to parents that they wouldn't have to pay until their child exited childcare, and it would help with those initial upfront costs, because we know parents have those initial upfront costs. Not all of them can afford it because they've been off work, of course, and so we'd give them the £500 to help with that initial upfront cost. So that's the things I would look to do, because if we're serious about not just reducing poverty, but eradicating poverty, then doing all we can to help people, particularly women, get into work, it'll be better for everybody. The second, or the first question you asked, I agree with a lot of what my colleagues here are saying. I don't know if you, like me, had the misfortune of watching Prime Minister's questions this week, but it was one of the most disgusting exchanges I have ever seen between the Prime Minister, a Tory Prime Minister, and frankly a pale imitation of a Tory Prime Minister with Keir Starmer, where they were trying to outmuscle each other on who could turn back refugees from the UK. Disgusting, despicable, abhorrent, and goes against everything we as a party, dare I say everything we as a nation, stand for. And, you know, immigrants, New Scots, have given us so much to this country through academia, through business, through their cuisine, thank goodness for it. You know, they've enriched us as a country and as a nation, and we've got to be welcoming. And, Kate's absolutely right, helps our economy too. The amount of people, the amount of businesses, the amount of staff that is required in our public sector that we could benefit from that inward migration. And the second thing, the last thing I'll say on this is I am unashamedly, unapologetically European, and we must rejoin the European Union as quickly as we possibly can as an independent nation. And I can't wait for the day that Edinburgh is an independent European capital as part of an independent Scotland. And for that, we can't settle for anything less. Can't settle for EFTA, can't settle for anything else. We have to make sure we rejoin the European Union. And absolute last thing, so I keep saying last thing, absolute last thing I'll say is that is why I took a slightly different approach to Nicola in that respect. The reason why she mentioned the de facto referendum, I wouldn't take it off the table entirely. I think we should discuss that. But for me, one of the reasons why it's not my preferred option is because it disenfranchises European citizens from voting. And, you know, particularly after Brexit, we've got huge amounts of support from our European citizens. So that's one of the reasons why I've distanced myself slightly from that approach.
Thanks, Humza. Humza mentioned being the third person to answer. I can just say the next order is, according to the SNP's question randomiser, a very sophisticated piece of equipment. It will be Humza, Ash and Kate for this question. The gentleman at the front.
Hi. Adam Banji from Edinburgh Central. I'm going to break a trend and try and keep to the rules with regard to questions. I think most people agree that we're not getting to independence without significant support from people who presently think we're barking mad, right? And so my question to all three of you is, what pitch can you make to no voters that you think distinguishes you from your colleagues?
Thank you, Adam. And Humza?
Actually, I suspect that there is a lot that unites us on this question, because for me, as I said this in my opening contribution, Adam, was an excellent question, is we've got to get off this issue of process. I'm not saying we don't discuss process, it is important, and we've got to find a process to get us to where we need to get to. But it is going to come when independence becomes that consistent majority view. And to do that, we have to provide a vision. So we have to, first of all, govern well. And I think we've got a good track record to build upon. But we've got to govern well. We've got to have the best people in government. We've got to show what we can do with devolution so people believe that when it comes to independence, my goodness, we could do even more on top to build upon devolution. So first of all, govern and govern well. Secondly, we need to be ambitious. What was the spirit of 2014? The spirit of 2014 was hope over fear. In a nutshell, it was hope over fear. And we need to give people hope. By God, people need hope. And we've got to say and be ambitious. It's not about reducing poverty. I want to eradicate poverty. I want to be bold on land reform. I want to make sure that when it comes to renewables, for example, I want to unleash the green potential of this country. 77,000 jobs in the green economy that can be unleashed. You know, we do that. We don't just lease off our renewables. We should take an equity stake. We should make sure that the profits come back to the people, not just remain with shareholders. We have to tackle land reform. Land in this country is in the hands of too few people. It has to be in the hands of most of us. So if I'm being honest and really truthful with you, Adam, almost 16 years in government, we've got to re-energize and find that bold, radical spirit that's made so many people vote for us, still vote for us, and build upon the legacy. So the vision is to inspire. I could say 101 things about what I think we could do with independence. Don't worry, Keith, I won't say the 101. But we've got to absolutely get out there, and there's no shortcut, Adam. We've got to speak to every single person on every single doorstep. We're going to win this if we go city by city, town by town, village by village, doorstep by doorstep. If we do that, then I promise you we win our independence. We only do it when we inspire with a positive vision.
Thanks, Humza. Ash?
Yeah, so I think we need to, obviously, you know, it's not a radical suggestion to suggest that we need to build support. I think we all accept that we need to do that. But I just also want to put in the caveat as well that we need to make sure we keep the support we already have, because we don't want to get into a position where people feel, you know, that they're maybe being taken for granted, or that we've moved away from positions that people supported, and that, you know, we lose that support. So I think that's very important. My view on that, you know, so I was campaigning full-time in the Yes campaign in the run-up to the vote in 2014, and I had a lot of conversations with people. My view on that is there was a significant number of people, I couldn't quantify that for you, but it was definitely a significant number of people who in their heart wanted to vote yes. And they wrestled with it really quite hard. But in the end, there was just something that held them back. You know, there was a couple of issues, and you in the room will know exactly what I'm talking about, where we didn't quite manage to make that case well enough. You know, there was a couple of issues, so they were a bit nervous, so we could need to do better on that this time around. And so what I'm suggesting, which I believe is different from my fellow candidates here, is that if we set up this commission and we task it with making the case in terms of preparing and planning and setting up the infrastructure. So we would start, if I become First Minister, we will start work on that immediately. On day one, I will set up this commission. and they will start planning and preparing and getting this ready. So I'll give you an example of one of the issues that I felt was a key battleground in 2014, that we perhaps were not able to win that argument. We weren't able to give people the comfort on that issue, was currency. And many people will know what I'm talking about. And that was the one issue. I did street stall after street stall after street stall, and that was the one issue. I don't know if anyone remembers Alex Salmon having that debate with Alistair Darling, that first one, and it didn't go very well. No. And that was that, and the next morning I was on a street stall, and that was the first and only time I've been shouted at in the street was about currency. They were shouting at me in the street, Plan B and all that, so we definitely could have made a better argument on that one. So I think if we can set up everything to do with the currency as much as we can under devolution, then we continue the planning, set up the central bank while we're doing the negotiations to leave the UK. Then at the time that we become independent, we can move to that new currency within weeks. And the reason I know we can do that is because other European countries have done this. So you can go and have a look at that. There's information out there on the other countries that have done it. The quickest one was 1 month and 7 days that one country did it. So it's amazing what can be done. And I think that will give people the confidence that they need in order to say, right, I'm not worried about that now because I can see Scotland's made the planning, we've had the discussion, we've won the argument, and then we can move on. And the other thing that I think is different about me is I want to set the wider movement free. I want them to go off, and I want to bring back the absolute best that we had during the Yes campaign. Because I was in it and I saw it, and that grassroots campaign was awesome. So we need to bring that back, and in the convention, they can work on that themselves. This will be totally separate from government, as it should be, out in civil society, people getting on with that, and I want them to co-design that campaign. And the way I envisage that is that they will use that campaign, design the messaging to build relationships with people, to have the conversations with people about the things that are important to them and move them gradually in their position from no to yes. So I think I've got a unique plan here. I think it's got all the elements that we need. I've thought about it really carefully in order to get us from where we are now into Scotland and becoming a member of the United Nations.
Thanks, Ash. And Kate?
Thanks very much. Well, I think this is probably one of the most important questions that the SNP needs to be grappling with right now, which is, again, as I said in my opening remarks, ironic, because it's not about convincing all of us, it's about how we reach out to those who are not part of our movement. And before I come on to really answering your question, which was what might I offer, can I also say that I think it needs to be addressed as a team. I have two, for example, exceptional colleagues on either side of me, both of whom have unique skills, talents, experiences when it comes to reaching no voters. Humza is in a league of his own when it comes to communicating and reaching out to people and persuading people. Ash has a clarity of vision, which I think is exceptional. And ultimately, when it comes to persuading people, we're only going to do it as a team. And all of us have different skills, abilities, backgrounds. We've got lawyers in the room. We've got people from all walks of life. And we are the ones that are going to shape the vision and the message to convince people, and then we're the ones that are going to use our contacts, our friends, our family to persuade them. To directly answer your question, what can I bring? I think the fault lines run along the economic arguments. And if there's one thing I think I can do, it's about making the economics real for people. So we hear GERS figures batted around, and there's a lot of debate about them, but actually not often do you hear people getting in and about them and underneath them when it comes to the general public. How many people know that 70% of the revenue raised in GERS is determined by the UK government? 40% of the spend is determined by the UK government, and yet they use that as an argument to show why Scotland can't afford to be independent. It shows precisely why Scotland can't afford not to be independent. So, on all the infrastructure about the economy, we need an answer. But more than that, we ultimately need to show how Scotland can be wealthier, fairer, greener. Because here's the deal. There's other independent countries that don't have half the resources that we have, but are wealthier. And why is that? Because they're not shackled to an old-fashioned Westminster economic model. So that's what I think I can offer.
Thanks very much, Kate. Time to get some gender balance again. The lady just over here.
Hello, I'm Hazel Godfrey from 4th Branch, Edinburgh. In 2018, Scotland produced the Sustainable Growth Commission report and became a founding member of the Wellbeing Economy Governments. Following independence, which one of these economic development pathways should Scotland follow, and why?
Thank you very much. The order this time is Kate, Humza, then Ash. So over to you again, Kate.
Great. The wellbeing economy approach. And I say that because there has been a lot of international interest in that pioneering initiative, the Wellbeing Economy Governments Initiative, which was set up by ourselves in partnership with 2 other governments, has attracted attention from across the world. So people have, I can think of the Canadian government, for example. I've had sit-down meetings over the phone with the representatives of Canadian governments to talk about what we're doing to further the wellbeing economy and how we're using our budgets differently. And I love that, because we don't need to wait to be independent, to be pioneering when it comes to the wellbeing economy. And for me, at the very heart of my approach, my pitch, the vision I have for Scotland is the wellbeing economy, which is you have a prosperous economy, but the prosperity is not the purpose. The prosperity is a means of eradicating poverty. And this is not about trickle-down economics. This is about creating well-paid, secure jobs across Scotland, whether you're in the Hebrides, you're in Shetland, or you're in Selkirk. We create well-paid, secure jobs with strong terms and conditions that make work pay, so that people who are in work can actually afford to live. Unlike the situation we have right now, where inflation is eating away at wages, people are doing 3 jobs and they still can't afford their bills. So the wellbeing economy, which we've already been pioneering, needs to be built on, needs to be expanded, because bear in mind, most of the macroeconomic levers are still in Westminster. But where we have been able to shift, we have done so already. And I think there's a lot further that we can go. Prosperity, eradicating poverty, public services. That's the triumvirate. That's the triangle. And that is our focus, needs to be our focus as a government.
Thanks, Kate. And Humza?
I think the Sustainable Growth Commission's out of date. I think it's not the approach I would take. The wellbeing economy is absolutely the approach we have to take. Unapologetic about that. Great work that's been done by Believe in Scotland. I think they're an excellent organisation. Gordon McIntyre, Kemp and others who've been involved. They had a poll out last week, if you saw it, an excellent poll that showed if we centre our economic approach in the wellbeing economy, support for independence goes up and consistently stays in the mid-50s. I'm ambitious, I want to go even further than that, but it's a pretty good place to be. And for me, that is at the heart of that wellbeing economy approach. An economy that works for the people as opposed to the other way around. That fairness, happiness, health, they are given as much weight, nay, more weight than economic growth. Economic growth for a purpose. And we do that, goes back to Adam's question, we do that, then we inspire people. It doesn't have to be the way it is at the moment. You know, I remember, and I'm a Ouija at heart, of course, that what Jimmy Reid said, rat races are for rats, right? We need to get off that rat race. We need to say to people that actually we need to work for a purpose, not just to work ourselves to the bone. And there's great work also being done, has already been done by Shona Robertson, Neil Gray, and the Fairness and Social Justice Commission. I would commend that work to anybody that wants to take a look. And I agree that we can demonstrate what we mean by a well-being economy right now. Of course, we could do so much more with the powers of independence of that. There's just simply no doubt. But we can demonstrate now. And one of the things that, again, I am unapologetic about, unashamed about, is that I plant my flag down on the path of progressive taxation. I absolutely believe that if you earn more, you must pay more. And if you earn more and pay more, then that's what, if you take 23-24 under John Swinney's most recent budget, and 23-24, what he's done by doing that, and which carries, by the way, popular support, is that allows £1 billion more to come into the health service. That's £1 billion that we spend in paying our nurses, our porters, our paramedics, and everybody in the health service fairly. So, yep, absolutely grow the economy. I agree with that. We absolutely have to ensure we give as much support to help those who are economically inactive into work. Not creating jobs and demanding they go into work. No, giving them the support around childcare, as Marta's already said. Giving them as much support, holistic support to get them into work, and we're doing some of that. But do not ever cede any ground when it comes to progressive taxation.
Thanks, Humza. And Ash?
Yeah, I'd agree. I think the Growth Commission model, I think things have really moved on from when that report came out. Things do move quite fast in terms of the position on the economic case. So definitely the well-being economy for me as well. And we have to remember, economies are not for the government. Economies are for the people in the country. And so we need an economy that works for everyone. So we need well-paid jobs. We have to remember that many of the families where the children are living in poverty, these children have parents who are in work. So work isn't paying enough for people at the moment, or many people in Scotland, to be able to put a roof over their children's head, feed and clothe them. That is completely unacceptable. So we need to move on from that model. So we need well-paid jobs for people where they're able to have an appropriate work-life balance, where they're being paid enough that they can look after their families. And we also need to be able to protect our environment as well, so that it's a clean and healthy place for everyone to live. And that's one of the reasons I want Scotland to be independent. There's absolutely no point being an independent country if we're just going to be exactly the same as we are as part of the UK. We want to be more ambitious. We want the country to be a better place to live. We want it to be fairer and greener and a nicer place to live. And we know that countries where the levels of inequality are more pronounced are not good places to live. We can see that where it's measured by the Gini coefficient, where there's much lower levels of income inequality, the people, it's nicer places to live, people are happier, it's just more pleasant all round. And we can see that in some of our neighbouring countries. So I want Scotland to have that. I want us to work towards that. I want us to all feel like we're part of an economy that is delivering for the people that live in Scotland.
Thanks, Ash. Just to say, the next order of answering will be Humza, Kate, then Ash. I've been trying to make sure it's gender balanced and from the front and the back, but I've forgotten the sides. So I'm going to go to Joe, who, as always, has caught my eye just over here. Joe.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for effectively chairing such a good debate this evening. My name is Professor Joe Goldblatt. I'm with the Edinburgh Central Branch. And I think we can all agree how lucky we are to have such talented candidates. Thank you for stepping forward. I have one question, Chair, and my question is simply this. In all the previous hustings which I've observed, when we ask our candidates questions, they say, well, I'd like to make 3 points. I'm going to seek a 4th point from you this evening. And the 4th point is because you're all parents, as I'm now a grandfather. What might you say to your wee bairns, in fact to Jock Tamsin's bairns, all of us, about how you would like us to behave in the early days of a new country, so that Scotland becomes in our lifetime the greatest small nation on earth? What do you expect of us? Thank you.
question from a true professor. Humza, you're first.
Oh, what a question from Professor Goldblatt, and a true internationalist of our movement as well. So we're actually lucky to have Joe as part of the party, part of the movement, and really grateful to him for asking that question. That's not me sucking up for your vote, by the way. Genuinely know the good work that you've done for me, and congratulations on becoming a grandfather too. What great news as well. Though, can I say, on behalf of parents everywhere, to their own parents, the grandparents of their children, can you stop giving them so much sugar and then handing them back to us? That is not. I know it's your prerogative, but I think I can speak for Kate and I in particular. It makes life bloody difficult, right? Anyway, let's get to the substance of your question. We should be acting now as though we're in the early days of a new nation. And if people look now at how we act, what our values are, then they will be confident that when it comes to independence, that we will care for all of our citizens. And that's why I think it's so important that Nicola, First Minister's questions, was unequivocal in her support for refugees and asylum seekers, in sharp contrast to the inhumane policies of the UK government, who are willing to turn away people in their desperate hour of need. And for me, what I want us to do, and what we've got to do, when we take the vision of independence to the doorsteps, is respect and empathise with no voters. Respect and empathise. We're not going to win them over by shouting at them. We're not going to win them over by haranguing them. We're not going to win them over by telling them they're stupid for not believing in independence. We're going to win them over if we truly understand why they're voting no. What is it that makes them want it? What's the fears? How do we address those fears? What about the British identity? What is it that makes them want to stay within the union? And how do we make sure that is what we tap into to try to reassure them and persuade them? And on the day we get independence, the day we win a referendum, and it's coming soon, on the day we win our referendum, the very first thing I would do as First Minister when we win that referendum is reach out to our no voters and say, you are part of our independent nation. You are just as vital as anybody who voted yes. You are a fabric of our society, and we are going to go on this journey together, whether you voted yes or whether you voted no. And I think that's going to be really important in the approach we take to win people over to independence.
Thanks, Humza. And Kate?
How do I want us to act in the first few days of being an independent country? I want us to act as though we believe in ourselves, because we will only become independent when we believe in ourselves, and success is not inevitable. We need to believe in ourselves. So the same message as I will be sharing with my daughter as she grows up will be the message I want to communicate to every citizen in the first day of an independent Scotland. Believe in yourself. You are smart enough, talented enough, wealthy enough, creative enough. You have a track record, a heritage, a culture, a history which you should be proud of. And no country at the point of becoming independent will have been as wealthy and successful as Scotland will be when we become independent. But to reach new heights, it's really simple. We Scots, we think humility is a virtue, and it is. But do you know what? So is self-confidence.
What good answers from my fellow candidates there. That's a tough one to follow. What do I say to my children about how we want to be? I like to think that we're all here to love, to learn, and to grow. And I think that would apply equally to a country as it does to an individual, that we should treat others with respect, and we should go towards things that we find exciting, but also a little bit scary. I think that applies to the country as well. I'd also like to say that I think Scotland might like to have a constitution, that we might like to develop a constitution, that we might like to crowdsource that constitution. and that it would reflect, codify and showcase the values that we hold dear in Scotland and in that new country of a new Scotland.
Thanks, Ash. And I'll go to the other side, the lady just over here.
Thank you very much, Deputy Leader, for noticing me. My name is Catherine Wooldridge. I am from Dundee West Branch, and I promise I have quickly condensed a three-question into one question. The Bute House agreement with the Green Party has been a success, but I have heard some candidates say that the Green Party won't work with them. Please explain why that is, as I think it's your responsibility to ensure that the Bute House agreement continues as part of your effort to provide good governance and to unify the Yes movement. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The fact that the first place I stood for election was Dundee West is no indication of bias. You just caught my eye. So it's going to be Kate, Ash, then Humza. So Kate.
Great. Well, prior to the Bute House agreement, the level of stress every year to get a budget through was enormous. And the Bute House agreement made budget process a lot easier and a lot more focused on the issues where we could jointly unite. So if there's anybody who A, valued the Bute House agreement, but B, had experience of negotiations with the Greens, it's me. And I think that more generally, to win independence, we've got to work with organisations, groups and parties that all share our objective when it comes to independence. One of the sort of values of the Bute House agreement, though, is that it aligned our joint efforts where we agreed and it identified areas that were excluded. So one of those areas that was excluded was, of course, economic growth and economic prosperity. Now, I think from Scotland's perspective right now, there's a lot more that we could do when it comes to economic prosperity. In terms of the well-being economy, there's well-being, which is really important, but there's also the economic part. So we do need to see more growth, not least when our economy grew by 0.1% last quarter. So the point I've made when it comes to the Bute House agreement is that I would like to continue to work with the Greens, and I think we need to look at how to ensure we can work with the fact that I'm so keen that we focus on our economic potential, focus on economic prosperity, really unlock the potential of key industries, because I think that prosperity element is vital. In fact, it's almost non-negotiable if we're serious about eradicating poverty and reinvesting in our public services. So my approach has been, I've always worked well with them, keen to continue to work, but I have got a focus on economic prosperity, which I think is really critical to the people of Scotland and those kids in poverty that I talked about at the beginning. And if we can find a way of continuing to work together whilst maintaining that focus on economic prosperity, then I'm sure whoever's Finance Secretary will continue to enjoy budgets a lot more than I used to.
Thanks, Kate. Ash?
Thank you. Yes, so the Greens are obviously our coalition partners in government right now. Obviously, as candidates, we're all being asked, what do we think of that? Would we continue it? And I actually think that it's probably not appropriate to be giving answers in media interviews about whether that should continue or not. That's a conversation to have face-to-face with our Green partners in a mature, grown-up way to have that conversation. Obviously, there have been some media reports that you're alluding to where the Green Party members themselves are saying that they might have issues with the leadership of certain candidates. That's obviously a decision for the Green Party themselves. I think I did call the Greens a couple of days ago when I was reaching out to all the pro-independence party leaders. I've yet to get a return call back, but I'll keep trying to see if I can get to speak to them. You know, in terms of the wider movement, they're very important to that conversation. And, you know, I would really hope that they would be part of the Independence Convention, working alongside people of no party, all the other different parties as part of the wider movement. But in terms of government, you know, there are obviously areas where we're very closely aligned with the Greens on some things, but there are other areas where we're not so aligned. And we've had a couple of years of that agreement now, and I wonder if maybe this might be something that the SNP membership at large might like to have a discussion on to see how it's working for everyone. So I would certainly want to speak to the Greens, see if we're able to continue the relationship, and see if that might be possible.
Thanks, Ash. And Humza?
Can I just remind everybody that 95% of our membership endorsed the Butte House Agreement with the Greens. So any candidate who is talking about listening to our membership has to listen to 95% of our membership. Whoever wins this leadership contest is not going to get 95% of the votes, I can guarantee you that. So it's about listening to, we should have self-confidence, it's true, but let's be realistic, right? So 95% of our membership voted for that Butte House Agreement. So for me, I just will leave you not with one scintilla of doubt that to me that deal with the Greens is worth its weight in gold. Absolutely worth its weight in gold. The reason why is because, yep, we've been in minority government before, but I'm telling you now, sitting in that chamber as I do, it is one of the most toxic environments from our opposition. Can you imagine that the first act of a new First Minister of the SNP is to rip up a deal and reject our Green partners? And you'd have to rely on Douglas Ross or Anna Sarwar to pass our budget. Madness, madness for any SNP leader to even contemplate doing that. And, you know, I'm sorry, it's not for a new leader to come in and start to unpick a Butte House Agreement that was agreed by 95% of our membership. To say that we now want to insert economic prosperity, but it's the well-being economy that they believe in and that we believe in. And so to unpick that and to damage that relationship won't just cause us difficulty in the Scottish Parliament. I promise you, it will have ripple effects for councils up and down the country. So it'll have huge impacts and huge effects right across the country. So I am saying, as I say, in order that I don't leave you with a scintilla, an iota of doubt whatsoever, as First Minister, I would honour that agreement. I would honour our membership. I would want to strengthen that pro-independence majority in Parliament. And I'm a unifier. I want to make sure I reach out to the entire movement. You can't do that if you reject and disregard the second largest independence party in the country.
Can I just say we spoke before with the candidates and we've agreed that the last question will be wrapped up with their concluding remarks as well. So this will be the last question, but it will also be a chance for the candidates to make their final pitch. Can I see the gentleman at the back? I think he's got a beard. It's my eyesight, apologies. No, you've just looked round. The person has just looked round. That's you, yeah.
Thanks very much. I'm Rob Allen. I'm from Paisley branch. I was recently in Edinburgh East. Ash, when it comes to the currency union, you're talking about it. I think you're dead on. I recall that you minored in currencies, and I looked at the Asian financial crisis and where it started, right? So I thought that what you were saying was absolutely dead on. I campaigned in Edinburgh. I was passionate about it. I then was angry and disappointed that we lost that referendum. I then created all under one banner to take the, to create a marching movement. So I was part of that created that. What made me do that was the lies about the currency union from the No campaign. On the 2nd of February 2014, Andrew Bailey, who's now the Governor of the Bank of England, he was on the Scottish Affairs Select Committee. Right? It was chaired by, I think it was Ian Davidson. And he said these words: "We will be a lender of last resort to the Scottish Government. You just have to see what happened to Iceland without regulatory support." And that was on the channel, parliamentary channel number 81. I didn't record that, but what I thought I'd do is I'd get it on BBC iPlayer. And BBC iPlayer, If you can be quiet just now, please. And BBC iPlayer, what they done is they didn't broadcast that. Now, what I've done is I then wrote to the Bank of England and asked them for their transcript. Okay? Yeah. Okay, so Ash has addressed it earlier on, but I didn't hear much about it in terms of that from Kate or Humza. I mean, can you explain how you would advance that concept?
Okay, I can say that, just to repeat the point, that so the order here is Ash, Humza and Kate, and Ash will have the chance as well to, as each of the candidates will, to give some concluding remarks as well as address a question. Thank you very much. Over to you,
Thank
Ash.
you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I agree. I think there's about 200 countries in the world, and only 4 of them don't have their own currency. One of those, I think it was Moldova, needed to go to the IMF for a bailout during COVID. You need to have control over your own monetary policy in order to run your economy and to make a success of being an independent country. And we haven't been talking about it. We haven't been making the case. We haven't been talking about currency. We're not moving things forward. I think there's been more in the media about the idea of an independent Scottish currency in the last couple of weeks, because I've been talking about it, than we've probably talked about it in the last couple of years. And I think it's really important. We need to normalise that idea for people in Scotland that moving to another currency is normal, and it's what will lead to Scotland becoming successful, and it's nothing to be afraid of. And in my opinion, we should be doing that now, not waiting until the run-up to the next election or the next referendum or however that goes. And I think that making the case for that now also shows a confidence in preparing for independence, winning that argument, and that Scotland will go on to be very successful. It's so super important. Waiting, using the pounds, like we said we were going to last time, allows our opponents to use that political leverage exactly the same way that they did last time. And it's also a crazy experiment on the Scottish economy that no one else would take the risk with, quite frankly. We need to move to our new currency as soon as possible. So, I won't say any more about that, but I think I do have, if anyone's interested, I think I have with me some mock-ups of a possible Scottish currency, the designs from the Scottish Currency Group. So if anyone wants to have a look at them, they can come and talk to me about them later. But in summary, as we're finishing up this evening, I just want to say to you all that I don't accept that Westminster has a veto on the views of the Scottish people. So that is how I'm approaching this. I want to be assertive. I want to give the people of Scotland back the power to choose their own future. I believe I have a plan to get us to independence. So I think we either settle for devolution or we fight on towards independence. And I would like to be your leader to fight on towards independence. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate and Humza. Sorry, thank you, Ash and Humza.
Thanks very much. First and foremost, for me, I will say that I absolutely believe that Scotland should have its own currency. No ifs, no buts, no maybes. Our slight differences here are that we don't actually have the legal power to create our own central bank. So that doesn't exist at the moment. So we've got to work through our transition. Now that will upset some people who will say, I want it and I want it quick. And trust me, I want it as quickly as we possibly can. But we've already heard, actually from Ash herself, quite rightly to say, that where people's fears are in around currency and around pensions. And therefore, we've got to take people with us on this journey. And to do that, we've got to be absolutely credible in what we're putting forward in terms of our plan for currency. So for me, we've got a paper on currency, and we've seen the Scottish Government's perspectives on that particular issue. What's really important is that we get that prospectus into bite-sized chunks and get it to our activists, because you can disarm those who give false arguments about the currency. And this actually takes me to a slightly wider point, which is, I think in the SNP, if I'm being frank and honest, and within the Scottish Government, we're too slow about rebutting some of the nonsense that comes from the opposition and that comes from certain sections of the media. So one of the first things I would do as leader of the SNP would be to make sure we have that instant rebuttal unit, not one that sends out a press release 2 days later, one day it's already, the lie is already halfway around the world. The truth ain't got its pants on, right? So we've got to make sure I didn't make up that phrase, by the way, so for Paul, who seems to enjoy it. So I think we have to have that instant rebuttal unit that counteracts some of the lies, and they will tell lies about the currency. They will tell lies and disinformation about every single part of our prospectus. So for me, absolutely Scottish currency, get there as soon as we possibly can. There's got to be a transition period because we've got to set up the institutions in advance. But as soon as we can, absolutely have that independent currency. For me, I'm not going to give you the whole pitch. You've heard that already. You've heard it throughout the course of the day. I just wanted to reiterate what I said at the beginning, that I think the job for you to choose the next leader of the SNP has got to be somebody you believe that can inspire, because we're going to win independence by inspiring people with the vision for independence. It's got to be somebody that you believe that can keep our support and then grow our support and unify right across the movement. And it's got to be somebody who, of course, can govern and govern well. I think all of my colleagues absolutely can do that. And I hope you believe that I could do that as well. And then who is it that's going to be with you shoulder to shoulder? Who's going to stand with you, whether it's in the rallies, whether it's chapping the doors, whether it's leading from the front. And I want to be able to do that, but not as the leader alone in the SNP. We have huge amounts of talent right across the entire party. I've been with pride on a Wednesday afternoon when Stephen Flynn tears them apart in Westminster, or Mary Black tears them apart in Westminster as well. Well, your very own Tommy Shepherd, he's blooming good as well, I have to say, and tears them apart in Westminster. And we've got great talent in local government, hundreds of councillors up and down the country who are doing an amazing job at the front line. Or, of course, excellent colleagues in the Scottish Parliament as well, and amongst the wider membership. We've got to harness that talent. Nicola, when she stood down, I was gutted, absolutely gutted. But you know what? It's also an opportunity where new faces can come to the front, where we can re-energise that movement. And I give you my promise, you're stuck with me. Whatever happens, I'm a son of this party. My dad joined in 74. I've been a member for almost 20 years. I hope to win. I wouldn't be in the contest if I didn't think I could win it. But if I don't, I promise you this, whoever is our leader, I'll be standing behind them 100%.
Thanks, Humza. And Kate.
Thanks very much. Well, Scotland will move to its own currency. My view is that it needs to do that at a time that is right, because what's most important in the first few days of independence is having a stable economy. It's that stability that will keep the bills paid, it's that stability that will ensure the wages are paid, and it's that stability that will actually make the difference to Scotland being a wealthier, fairer and greener country. And we do then move to our own currency when the time is right. And, you know, Scotland will be independent. The path ahead, though, is one that we are all debating and discussing at this point in time, because we're at a crossroads. And what we need to focus on is that clear, re-energised vision for the future. We need to look again at how we persuade those who aren't yet persuaded. And apart from anything else, we need to keep being a team. And unity is not uniformity. You can have the space for debate and discussion, because we need debate and discussion to ensure that we get the best ideas. But we're ultimately all united. We're united in line with that one goal. That's what I said at the outset, and that's what I want to finish on. We are united when it comes to that goal of delivering independence. And I think the next leader needs to build on the legacy that we have and go further. The next leader needs to take the fight to the opposition. It needs to take the fight to Labour. It needs to take the fight to the Tories. We've got a Labour leader up in Scotland today. We need to take them on, and we will win. But the next leader also needs to be able to reach out to no voters who may not have a say in this contest and won't necessarily be voting for the SNP right now. But we want them to vote for independence. And I think they can be persuaded. They can be persuaded with the right case, the right vision, and the right approach. And the last thing we need from a leader is a leader who can govern well, who sees their job as, yes, standing up for devolution, absolutely, but never being content to only defend devolution, and instead will use devolution to ensure we serve the people of this country. Because the reason that we keep winning is because the people trust us. They trust us to have their best interests at heart. They trust us to do whatever we can to serve them and their interests. And they trust us to take them into the future. And we need more people to trust us, because we need more people to support, not just the party winning elections, that's important, but to win that critical key election, the day that Scotland chooses to believe in itself and become independent. We're there. We believe in ourselves. We believe we can be fairer, wealthier and greener, and we need to persuade more people that independence is not an abstract concept. Independence is the route to eradicating poverty, to being a prosperous country, and to being fairer. And one day we'll get there, and one day we'll be looking back 5 years into independence, celebrating our 5th Independence Day, 10th Independence Day, 20th Independence Day, and those in the dim and distant future will be celebrating 100 years of independence. It's coming yet, it's coming soon, and we're going to get there if we go together. Thanks.
Thank you very much. My apologies that we couldn't get more questions in, but blame those who sneaked in 2 questions at the start. Thanks very much. And also, can I also thank the candidates for a really collegiate, excellent discussion that we've had tonight.